Washington Journal continues.
Congressman Scott Garrett here with us for the next half an hour or so to talk about financial regulations. First of all, the conferees have met. Yesterday was your first full day of marking up the legislation. What are you hearing from your constituents? You represent New Jersey, a lot of folks that work on Wall Street. What are they saying to you about this legislation?
Yeah, I guess first and foremost is they're concerned, well, they're concerned about spending in general down here in Washington. That's, if you're just in a regular town hall meeting, go visit your local Rotary Club or that sort of thing. That's the first topic that always comes up. And then if the conversation switches over to what you're talking about, financial services, okay, let's not have more spending over there, which translates to the short term, no more bailouts. Stop bailing out Wall Street, stop bailing out everybody else but me, sort of expression meaning them.
Yeah.
And so make sure you don't pass a bill that perpetuates it.
Well, do you think this legislation that you're working on, financial regulations bill, would continue to do that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you had the discussion in the Senate a few weeks ago, I guess, before we went on break, right, with the $50 billion fund that was in there. First it was higher than that, then it was lower, well, it never got lower than that, then it was out. And when they pulled out the $50 billion fund, they said, well, we ended the bailouts, right? Well, no. If you go into the 1,500 page bill, you'll see there's still lots of other language which gives the government, Washington, a lot of ability to step in and say, we're going to help out this company and not help out this one. We're going to help out you, but not help out you. And where does the money ostensibly come from initially? Well, from you and I, from the taxpayer. So it is a bailout.
In the height of the crisis last year, though, Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke and the Treasury Secretaries under the Bush administration and under the Obama administration said they needed more regulatory authority to be able to step in. So why not have that kind why not give that kind of authority?
Well, it sort of works like this. I mean, you could probably have a long debate on this program sometime with the proponents of what was happened during those times and the opponents of it. I did not support the whole TARP bailout and all that, but that was done during an emergent time. That was done when we'd never had anything like this happen before, and that was done during a time when we didn't have the opportunity to set into place the correct rules, game plan, statutes, what have you, going forward. That's all history now. Now we have the, I don't say the luxury, because this is certainly not a luxury in time, but we have the opportunity to set into statute what we should do. Heaven forbid this ever happens again. And our position is, Republican position is, we should not perpetuate what we did, the wrong things we did in the past. Let's change and take a different course. Let's set up a system so that if we have a situation where the economy begins to melt down, we have a statutory system that can say we can expedite bankruptcy for this company that made a lot of bad decisions, got into risky ventures that they shouldn't have gotten into. Well, that company will go and become bankrupt and go out of business. And the equity holders in that company, well, they'll lose everything. And the creditors in that company, they'll lose everything. We can now put into place laws that will do that and not do what we did in the past, which was act suddenly, quickly, emergently, and say we're going to help bail them out and prop them up for a period of time.
Is it fair, though, fair to say that it's a bailout? Alan Blinder writes in the Wall Street Journal this morning that it's not fair to call it a bailout because actually $700 billion was not given out, even though that was the amount legislated. It was more around $300 billion. And the money went for loans and for preferred stock. It was not spent. And most of these banks have paid it back. So is it fair to call it a bailout anymore?
Sure. When you're sitting in the position in the driver's seat, which is what the Fed and the Washington bureaucrats were doing at that time, saying, well, we're going to look to this particular financial institution and give them a great deal, which is what it was, because nobody else was lending them the money at that point in time. But we're going to look over to here and say to you, you know, we just don't think we're going to help you out with a loan, and we're going to let you fail. And that's basically what you had happen, right? Go all the way back to the very beginning of this. You had Bear Stearns and made a lot of bad decisions in the housing market. And the Fed says, okay, we're going to set up a situation to deal with the, not the equity holders there, but the creditors in that situation, help them out. Then you look over here to Lehman's, maybe not so much. We're not going to help the folks out over at Lehman's. And what happened at Lehman's? Well, they're not around anymore. So it is a bailout when you pick winners and losers.
Right.
And whether it's $300 billion or $400 billion, it's still a lot of money.
The Congress Daily reports this morning that the conferees are tackling the low-hanging fruit first and the tough sledding is ahead in the days to come. On the areas that have gotten attention, the fund for banks, the derivatives legislation, and whether or not you have them as sort of a separate industry, on those sort of things, where do you see compromise?
Well, it's not really so much, when you ask that question, it's a compromise between which parties, you might ask. It's really not so much a compromise between Republicans and Democrats, because we're the minority. I'm Republican, we're in the minority, and they're really not looking to us to try to compromise on any of these substantive issues at all. The compromise, I guess your question really goes to, is where is the compromise between the House and the Senate? Democrats on those things, right? And there's not a lot of room on that for compromise. You have Senator Lincoln, of course, winning her election, her primary election, and in the papers today saying that she is sort of like, paraphrasing, more determined than ever to go forward with her position. So she's over here, and you have the White House, and you have I guess Chairman Frank and others in our House saying just the opposite. So there's not a lot of room on that issue, for example.
But for you, because this isn't. I mean, you sit on a committee that. Well,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
You go ahead and tell our viewers where you see some compromise, where you could agree with Democrats.
Well, it's certainly not on this particular point, on the derivative aspect. Derivatives are so important to our economy and the functioning of our economy. It allows for businesses to hedge their risks going forward and allows, therefore, additional credit in the marketplace. You try to quash that down, you in essence dry that up, and you end up with a much tighter economy than we have right now. And actually what you do is make it even harder for businesses to operate. You make it even harder for businesses to expand. And look, last night the president was on TV, right, with regard to the whole energy situation in general, Louisiana specifically, energy in general. We've had corporations come in, businesses come in to us and say, look, we would like, prior to this, we would like to expand our development in alternative energies. Now that's going to cost us X numbers of dollars to do. Now we can either take the capital money that we have right now and invest it in this great new technology and energy, what have you, or we can, if this bill passes with the that they're talking about here on derivative trading, what have you, or we're going to have to take a big chunk of that capital and divert it over here for the margin requirements and the capital requirements of the place. Which do we want them to do? Explore in new energy alternatives and the like that will help address this situation going forward? Or just comply with these new onerous rules that really benefit very little, and we're really not part of the problem that brought us to this situation in the first place?